The Bone Orchard. Author Neil B. Chapter 1. The Letter That Smelled of Rot. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday, sandwiched between a gas bill and a final notice from the university, and Dr. Mira Vance almost threw it away. She was in the kitchen of her cramped Brooklyn apartment, the kind of place where the walls seemed to close in a little more each winter, and the radiator coughed like a dying man. Her coffee had gone cold 40 minutes ago. She hadn't touched the toast. Her eyes, red-rimmed and exhausted, scanned the pile of mail with the mechanical disinterest of someone who had stopped hoping for good news a long time ago. It was the smell that stopped her. Not the faint aroma of mildew that clung to everything in the building. Not the bitter scent of old coffee grounds, or the metallic tang of the city air that seeped through the cracked window frame. This was something else. Something wrong. Like wet earth after a thunderstorm. Like the underside of a rock you hadn't turned over in years. Like the inside of a grave. She picked up the envelope gingerly, holding it between two fingers as if it might bite. It was plain, cream-colored, with no return address. Her name was written in a flowing, almost calligraphic hand, Dr. Mira Vance. No address, no zip code. Just her name, as if the sender had known exactly where she lived without needing to write it down. Mira's thumb traced the flap. It wasn't sealed with glue. It was sealed with something dark and reddish-brown that had dried into a brittle crust. She knew, with a certainty that made her stomach lurch, that it was blood. She should have thrown it away. She should have called the police. She should have done anything other than what she did next. She opened it. Inside was a single dried leaf, pressed flat and preserved as if it had been waiting for this moment for years. It was the shape of a human hand, 5 distinct lobes, each ending in a point like fingers. The color was a deep, arterial red, so vivid it seemed almost wet. And when she held it up to the light, she could see veins running through it, not the delicate tracery of plant biology, but something else. The veins formed letters. October 31st. Her breath caught in her throat. The leaf trembled in her fingers. It wasn't just any leaf, she knew that now. It was a maple leaf, the same kind that had grown in the yard of the house she'd grown up in. The same kind that had turned blood red every autumn in the small, forgotten town of Fallows Hollow. And there, tucked beneath the leaf, was a photograph. It was old, Polaroid era, the colors faded to a sepia-tinged memory. The image showed a tree, a massive, gnarled maple with bark so dark it was almost black. Its branches twisted upward like arms frozen in a scream, and at the base of its trunk, the roots had formed a shape that was unmistakably human. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, with his arms outstretched, as if reaching for something just beyond the frame. The roots had grown through him, around him, into him. His face was turned toward the camera, and even in the faded photograph, Mira could see the terror in his eyes. She dropped the picture, as if it had burned her. It was her father. Dr. Samuel Vance had disappeared 15 years ago. Vanished from the face of the earth without a trace, without a note, without a single clue as to where he had gone or why. The police had searched for weeks. The newspapers had run his photograph. His colleagues at the university had expressed their shock and sorrow. And Mira, barely 12 years old at the time, had been left with nothing but questions and a grief that had calcified into a permanent, aching absence in her chest. She had spent years telling herself he was dead. That he had walked into the woods that day and never walked out, claimed by some accident or misadventure. It was easier than the alternative. Easier than believing he had left her on purpose. But this photograph showed him alive. Or at least, it showed him present. Trapped in a tree. Transformed into something that was neither plant nor man, but a horrifying fusion of both. The leaf had fallen from the envelope and landed on the kitchen table, its red surface gleaming under the fluorescent light. Mira stared at it, her mind racing through explanations, each one more absurd than the last. A hoax. Someone playing a cruel joke. A hallucination brought on by stress and lack of sleep. But the smell was still there. That wet earth, grave dirt smell. It was coming from the envelope, from the leaf, from the photograph. It was the smell of Fallows Hollow, the town she had fled the moment she turned 18, and had never returned to. She picked up the leaf again, turning it over in her fingers. On the reverse side, written in the same flowing hand, was a single word. Come. Mira sat at the kitchen table for a long time after that, the leaf clutched in her hand, the photograph staring up at her from the tabletop. She had a lecture to prepare for tomorrow. A stack of papers to grade. A life, such as it was, to get back to. But all of it felt distant now, irrelevant, like the props of a stage set she had built around a void. Her father had been a botanist. A brilliant one, the kind of man whose passion for plants bordered on obsession. He had spent his entire career studying the strange flora of the Appalachian Mountains, cataloguing species that grew nowhere else on Earth. He had taken her to Fallows Hollow when she was a child, had walked her through the forests and shown her the wonders that grew there. But there was one place he had never taken her. One place he had warned her never to go. The Bone Orchard. She had heard the stories, of course. Everyone in Fallows Hollow had. The orchard was a section of forest that sat on the edge of town, where the trees grew in strange, twisted shapes and the ground was littered with bones. Not animal bones. Human bones. The bones of the town's dead, who had been buried there for centuries, their remains absorbed by the roots of the ancient trees. The locals called it a cemetery, but it wasn't. It was something else. Something older. Something that the town's founders had built on a foundation of secrets and blood. Mira had never believed the stories. She was a scientist, a botanist like her father, and she had been raised to trust evidence over superstition. But as she stared at the photograph, at her father's terrified face frozen in the bark of a tree, she felt the foundations of her rational mind beginning to crack. She needed to go back. She needed to see the orchard for herself. She needed to find out what had happened to her father. And she needed to do it before October 31st. Chapter 2. Welcome to Fallows Hollow. The drive took 12 hours. Mira had left Brooklyn at dawn, her car packed with clothes, camping gear, and a collection of botanical instruments that seemed almost absurdly inadequate for what she was about to face. The GPS had guided her through the tangled highways of the Northeast, past the sprawl of New Jersey and the rusted industrial bones of Pennsylvania, until the roads grew narrow and winding and the cell signal faded to nothing. She crossed into West Virginia just after noon, and the landscape shifted. The flat, predictable suburbs gave way to mountains, ancient, forested peaks that rose like the backs of sleeping giants. The air grew cooler, cleaner, tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. The road wound through valleys and overpasses, past abandoned coal towns and churches with steeples that seemed to pierce the clouds. Fallows Hollow sat in a valley at the foot of the Allegheny Mountains, a town so small it barely registered on the map. The population had been dwindling for decades, the young people leaving for cities that promised opportunity and escape, leaving behind the old and the stubborn and the ones who knew the town's secrets. Mira saw the sign just after 4 in the afternoon, "Welcome to Fallows Hollow." Population 187. Founded 1782. The lettering was faded, the paint peeling, and beneath it someone had scratched a crude message into the wood, "Turn back while you still can." She didn't turn back. The town itself was exactly as she remembered it, which was to say, exactly as she had tried to forget it. A single main street lined with storefronts that had seen better decades. A hardware store. A diner with a flickering neon sign. A church with a steeple that seemed to lean slightly to the left, as if it had grown tired of standing straight. And there, at the end of the street, the forest. Dark and dense and impenetrable, the trees pressing so close together they seemed to form a wall. Mira drove slowly, her eyes scanning the storefronts for any sign of life. A few people were on the streets, an old man in overalls, a woman carrying groceries, a group of teenagers smoking cigarettes outside the convenience store, but they all turned to watch her pass. Their eyes were wary, suspicious, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. She parked in front of the diner, a place called the Rusty Spoon, and stepped out into the cool autumn air. The door chimed as she entered, and the few customers inside looked up from their coffee and pie with the same wary expressions she had seen on the street. The diner was small, the kind of place where the stools were bolted to the floor and the jukebox played nothing but country music. A woman in her 60s stood behind the counter, wiping a glass with a rag that had seen better days. Her name tag read Eileen. "What can I get you, hon?" Eileen asked. Her voice was pleasant, but her eyes were sharp, taking in every detail of Mira's appearance. "Coffee, please. And some information." Eileen's smile faltered. "Information about what?" "The orchard." The word hung in the air like a curse. The other customers had gone still, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Eileen's face hardened, the pleasant mask sliding away to reveal something colder underneath. "Nobody goes to the orchard," she said. "Not anymore. Not if they know what's good for them. My father did. 15 years ago. He went there, and he never came back." Eileen's expression flickered, just for a moment, but Mira caught it. Recognition. Fear. And something else, something that looked almost like guilt. "Samuel Vance," Eileen said. It wasn't a question. "You knew him." Everyone knew him. He was a strange man. Obsessed. Always asking questions, always poking around where he shouldn't have been. She shook her head. Some folks said he got what was coming to him. Got what was coming to him? Mira's voice was sharp, the anger rising despite herself. "He was my father. He disappeared. He died, and nobody ever found his body." "His body was found, hun. It's just not the kind of thing we talk about around here." Mira felt the temperature in the room drop. The other customers had turned away, suddenly fascinated by their coffee cups and pie plates. Eileen was staring at her with an expression that was almost sympathetic. "You need to leave," Eileen said. "You need to get in your car and drive back to wherever you came from. This isn't a place for outsiders. And it's definitely not a place for the kind of questions you're asking. I'm not leaving until I see the orchard." Eileen sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. "Then you're going to die out there. Just like your father." Chapter 3. The Innkeeper's Secret. The inn was called the Hollow Rest, and it was exactly the kind of place Mira had been dreading. The building was old, a Victorian relic that had been painted a cheerful yellow at some point in the distant past, but the paint had long since faded to a sickly cream. The porch sagged in the middle, and the windows were covered in grime that no amount of cleaning could erase. A sign above the door advertised vacancy, but the letters were so faded they were almost illegible. The woman who answered the door was in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had the sharp, calculating look of someone who had seen too much and trusted too little. Her name was Greta Mulberry, and she had been running the inn for 40 years. "I don't get many visitors these days," Greta said, leading Mira through a cluttered foyer into a small parlor that smelled of dust and old flowers. Not since everything changed." "Changed how?" Greta's eyes flickered toward the window, toward the dark line of the forest at the edge of town. "You don't know, do you? You've been away for a long time." 15 years. I left when I was 18. And you never came back. Not even for your mother's funeral. Mira flinched. Her mother had died 4 years ago, alone in the house she had refused to leave, and Mira hadn't been able to bring herself to return. She had told herself it was because she was too busy, too far away, too caught up in her own life. But the truth was simpler and uglier. She had been afraid. Afraid of the memories. Afraid of the questions she had never answered. Afraid of the forest that had swallowed her father whole. I couldn't, she said. I just couldn't. Greta nodded, as if she understood. I know that feeling. Sometimes the past is a door you shouldn't open. But you've opened it anyway, haven't you? You're here, and that means the door is open, and I don't think you can close it again. I need to see the orchard. I know. Greta sat down heavily in an armchair, her hands clasped in her lap. I figured that was why you came. You have your father's eyes, you know. And his stubbornness. I tried to tell him not to go, the same way I'm telling you now. He didn't listen either. What happened to him? I don't know. Greta's voice was hollow, empty. Nobody knows. He went into the orchard one afternoon, and he didn't come out. We searched for 3 days, but there was nothing. Just nothing. There's a photograph. Someone sent it to me. It shows him in a tree. Like he was part of it. Greta's face went pale, the blood draining from her cheeks. A photograph? Who sent it? I don't know. It was anonymous. But the leaf that came with it, it was from the orchard. I know it was. Greta was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. There are things in that forest that don't belong to this world. Things that have been there since before the town was built. The roots, Dr. Vance. The roots are alive. They remember. And when you walk on them, they remember you. What do they remember? Everything. Every sin. Every secret. Every death. Greta leaned forward, her eyes burning with an intensity that was almost frightening. This town was built on a burial ground. Not a cemetery, a burial ground. The first settlers made a pact with something in the earth. They gave it their dead, and in return, it let them live. But the pact isn't complete. It's never complete. The roots are still hungry, and they take what they want, when they want. Your father found out the truth. And the truth killed him. What truth? Greta's voice dropped to a whisper. The roots are not just the dead. They are the living, too. They are a network. A mind. And it's been growing for 2 centuries. It's almost ready to wake up. Mira stared at her, trying to process what she was hearing. It was insane. It was the kind of superstitious nonsense she had spent her entire adult life rejecting. But there was something in Greta's eyes, something that went beyond fear, beyond belief, that made her pause. I don't believe in monsters, Mira said. Greta smiled, a sad, knowing smile. Neither did your father. That's why it got him. Chapter 4. The first whisper. The room Greta gave her was on the 2nd floor, facing the forest. Mira stood at the window, looking out at the dark line of trees, and tried to calm the nervous flutter in her chest. It was just a forest. Just trees and dirt and leaves. There was nothing supernatural about it. But she remembered the photograph. She remembered her father's terrified face, frozen in the bark. She remembered the leaf, with its vein-formed message. She remembered the smell of rot. She had told herself she would wait until morning, that she would approach the orchard with a clear head and a scientific mindset. But the wait was unbearable. Every minute she spent in this room, with its peeling wallpaper and creaking floorboards, she felt the forest calling to her. Pulling her. whining in her blood like a splinter she couldn't remove. Greta had left her a key and a warning: don't open the window after midnight. The roots can hear. It was almost midnight now. The sky outside the window was black, the moon hidden behind clouds, and the forest was a solid, impenetrable wall of darkness. Mira told herself she was going to sleep. She told herself she would rest, and in the morning, she would have the strength to face whatever was out there. She lied. At exactly 12 o'clock, she opened the window. The air that rushed in was cold and damp, carrying the smell of wet earth and decaying leaves. It was the same smell that had been in the envelope. The same smell that had haunted her dreams for 15 years. And beneath it, almost too faint to hear, there was a sound. A whisper. It was not a voice, not exactly. It was more like the rustling of 1,000 leaves, the creaking of 1,000 branches, the sighing of 1,000 breaths. But within that sound, if she listened closely, she could hear words. Mira. Her name. Someone, something, was calling her name. She leaned out the window, straining to hear, and in the distance, she saw it. A tree, taller than the others, its branches reaching toward the sky like arms frozen in a gesture of desperate supplication. It was the same tree from the photograph. Her father's tree. And it was moving. Not swaying in the wind. Not shaking its leaves. It was shifting, its trunk warping and twisting, its branches contorting into shapes that were almost human. And at its base, the roots were writhing like snakes, burrowing into the earth and pulling it toward her. The whisper grew louder, more urgent. Come. Come to me. I have been waiting so long. Mira slammed the window shut. She stood there, trembling, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The whisper had stopped, replaced by the ordinary sounds of the night, the wind, the rustling leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. But she knew it was still out there. Waiting. Calling. And she knew, with a certainty that terrified her, that she would answer. Chapter 5. The Registry of the Dead. Morning came grudgingly, a pale grey light that did nothing to dispel the shadows. Mira had not slept. She had spent the night in a chair by the window, watching the forest, waiting for something to emerge from the darkness. Nothing had. The tree had stopped moving, the whispers had faded, and by dawn, the orchard seemed almost ordinary, just a collection of trees that had grown in a particularly dense patch of woodland. But Mira knew better. She waited until Greta left the inn to run errands, then slipped out of her room and made her way to the town hall. The building was a squat, brick structure that had been built in the 1920s and hadn't been updated since. The door was unlocked, the lobby empty, and the sign on the front desk read back in 15 minutes. Mira didn't have 15 minutes. She found the records room in the basement, a cramped, dusty space filled with filing cabinets and cardboard boxes. The smell of old paper and mildew was overwhelming, but she pushed through it, searching for anything that might give her answers. It took her an hour, but she found it. Tucked in a corner, hidden behind a stack of tax ledgers, was a leather-bound book with the words Registry of the Dead embossed on the cover in gold letters. She opened it carefully, the old binding creaking in protest. The pages were yellowed and fragile, but the handwriting was clear, a flowing cursive that had been used by generations of town clerks. Each entry listed a name, a date of death, and a brief description of the circumstances. And then, at the bottom of each entry, a sketch of a tree. Mira flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the names. Some were familiar, the founding families of Fallows Hollow, their descendants still living in the town. Others were strangers, their stories lost to time. But all of them had one thing in common: they had been buried in the orchard. Or rather, they had been planted there. She found her father's entry near the back of the book, the ink still dark, the handwriting sharp and recent. Dr. Samuel Vance. Date of death, unknown. Disappeared on October 31, 2011. Body never recovered. Tree appeared in the orchard 3 days later. Species, Acer saccharum, sugar maple. Sketch, a tall man with his arms outstretched, reaching toward the viewer. Expression of terror. Mira stared at the entry, her hands trembling. It was exactly as the photograph had shown. Her father, transformed into a tree. Trapped in the bark, his soul fused with the roots. But why? What had he done to deserve such a fate? And what had the town known about it? She turned the page, and her heart stopped. There was a second entry, written in the same sharp hand. A name she hadn't expected to see. Mira Vance. Date of death, not yet. If you are reading this, you have already begun the journey. Do not stop. Do not turn back. The truth is waiting for you, just as it waited for me. And when you find it, you must be brave enough to face it. Your father is not dead, Mira. He is not alive, either. He is something in between. And the only way to save him is to understand what he became. The orchard is not a curse. It is a call. And you must answer it. Mira closed the book, her mind reeling. The handwriting was her father's. She knew it from the letters he had sent her as a child, the notes he had left on the refrigerator, the journal he had kept in his study. There was no doubt in her mind. But when had he written it? He had been dead for 15 years. He had disappeared, vanished, left no trace of his existence. And yet, here was proof that he had known she would come. That he had prepared for it. That he was waiting for her. She slipped the book into her bag and crept out of the town hall, her heart pounding in her chest. The streets were quiet, the town still asleep in the grey morning light. But as she walked back toward the inn, she could feel eyes on her. Watching from the windows. Waiting. The orchard was calling her. And this time, she was ready to answer. Chapter 6. The Botanist's Madness. Mira spent the afternoon in her room, the registry spread out before her on the bed, its pages filled with the names of the dead and the trees that had grown from their bodies. She had brought her scientific equipment with her, a microscope, slides, vials, and a portable centrifuge that she used to analyze plant samples. The sap she had collected from the base of a tree outside the town hall was thick and amber-colored, with a consistency that reminded her of tree resin. But when she placed a drop under the microscope, what she saw made her blood run cold. The sap was full of cells. Human cells. Red blood cells. White blood cells. Platelets. They were all there, suspended in the amber fluid, preserved as if they were still alive. And when she added a drop of water to the slide, the cells began to move, dividing and multiplying in a grotesque parody of life. It was impossible. Human cells couldn't survive outside the body. They couldn't be preserved in sap. They certainly couldn't reproduce on their own. But here they were, under her microscope, doing exactly that. Mira sat back in her chair, her mind racing. The implications were staggering. The trees in the orchard weren't just trees, they were bioreactors, harvesting the genetic material of the dead and using it to sustain themselves. The roots were a network, a vast underground system that connected every tree in the forest. And somewhere at the center of it, the heart of the network pulsed with something that was almost life. She needed more data. She needed to see the orchard up close. But as she packed her equipment, Greta knocked on the door and entered without waiting for an answer. "You've been in here all day," Greta said, her eyes scanning the room. "I saw you go to the town hall. I know what you found." "The registry," Mira said. "My father's entry. He knew you would come back. He knew you would find it. He always knew." "How? How could he have written that entry 15 years before I even thought about returning? Greta's face was pale, her eyes haunted. Because the trees don't just remember the dead. They see the future. They can see all of it, every moment, every possibility. Your father knew you would come, because he saw it in the roots. Just as he saw what would happen to him. Mira felt the floor shift beneath her feet. It was too much. Too impossible. Too frightening to accept. You're telling me the trees are psychic. I'm telling you they are more than plants. They are more than anything you've ever encountered. They are the collective consciousness of 150 years of death and memory. And they want something from you. What? Greta's voice dropped to a whisper. They want you to finish what your father started. Chapter 7. The Boy Who Came Back. The scream cut through the quiet of the afternoon like a blade. Mira was in the inn's kitchen, helping Greta prepare dinner, when the sound reached them, a woman's wail, high and piercing, filled with an agony that seemed to tear the very air apart. They ran to the front of the inn, and what they saw made Mira's stomach lurch. A woman was standing in the middle of the street, her hands clasped to her face, her body racked with sobs. A crowd was gathering around her, their faces grim and frightened. And at her feet, lying in the dirt, was a small sapling. It was no more than 3 feet tall, its leaves a pale, sickly green. Its trunk was thin and spindly, and its roots were still caked with soil, as if it had been pulled from the earth just moments before. But it was the shape of the tree that made Mira's blood run cold. It was the shape of a child. A small boy, no more than 7, his arms outstretched as if reaching for someone. His face was frozen in an expression of terror, his mouth open in a silent scream. Tommy, Greta breathed. Oh God, it's Tommy Pruitt. Mira pushed through the crowd, her heart pounding. The boy's mother was sobbing hysterically, her hands clutching at the tree, as if she could somehow pull her son out of it. He's still alive, the mother screamed. I can feel him. I can feel him in there. He's still alive. Mira knelt beside the tree, her scientific mind racing. She could see the boy's face in the bark, the details so precise they were almost photographic. His eyes were open, wide and terrified, and they seemed to be looking directly at her. She reached out and touched the trunk. The bark was warm, almost feverish, and beneath her fingers, she felt something that made her jerk back in surprise. A pulse. A heartbeat. The tree was alive. It was breathing. It was thinking. And then, in a voice that was barely more than a whisper, it spoke. Mommy. It hurts. The roots are eating me. Please, Mommy. Please make it stop. The mother's screaming was drowned out by the shocked silence of the crowd. Everyone had heard it. Everyone had understood. The tree was Tommy Pruitt, and Tommy Pruitt was trapped inside it, suffering, dying by inches, and there was nothing anyone could do. Mira stood up, her hands shaking. The scientific explanations she had been clinging to had shattered into 1,000 pieces. This wasn't biology. This wasn't botany. This was something else, something ancient and terrible, and it was happening all around her. She looked toward the forest. The orchard was waiting, dark and silent, and somewhere in its depths, her father's tree was calling her name. Chapter 8. Sheriff Crow's Confession. The sheriff's office was a small, cluttered room at the back of the town hall, and Sheriff Elias Crow was a man who seemed to have been carved from the same weary stone as the building itself. He was in his 50s, with a lined face and graying hair, and his eyes had the weary, knowing look of someone who had seen too much of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of things. He sat behind his desk, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him, and listened in silence as Mira told him everything she had discovered. When she was finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long, slow breath. You know what we are dealing with here, he said. You've seen the trees. You've heard them speak. You know what they are. Then tell me, Mira said. Tell me what they are. Elias was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a worn, leather-bound journal. He slid it across the desk to her. This was your father's. He gave it to me before he went into the orchard. He said that if he didn't come back, I should give it to you. Mira opened the journal, her hands trembling. The pages were filled with her father's neat, careful handwriting, and as she read, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The roots were not a curse. They were a network, a living, thinking entity that had existed beneath the town since before it was settled. The first inhabitants, the Native American tribes who had lived in the valley, had understood it. They had made offerings to it, feeding it with their dead, and in return, it had given them life and prosperity. But when the settlers came, they had broken the pact. They had built their town on the sacred ground, plowing over the burial sites and ignoring the warnings. The root mind had been enraged, and it had lashed out, claiming the settlers dead and turning them into trees. It's not evil, Elias said. It's not good. It's something else, something that doesn't understand the difference. It just wants. It wants to connect. It wants to be part of the world. And it can't do that on its own. Then why does it kill people? It doesn't kill them. It absorbs them. It pulls them into the network, into the collective consciousness. They don't die. They just stop being themselves. They become part of something larger. Mira felt the truth of his words settling over her like a shroud. The root mind wasn't a monster. It was a child, reaching out for connection, and it had been reaching for centuries, misunderstanding what it was doing. The only one who ever understood it, Elias said, was your father. He spent years studying it, trying to find a way to communicate with it. He knew it wasn't evil. He knew it could be reasoned with. But he ran out of time. Time for what? Elias looked at her, his eyes filled with a grief that was almost unbearable. He tried to merge with it. To become part of the network, to guide it from the inside. But the root mind was too strong. It absorbed him instead of joining with him. And now he's trapped in there, just like Tommy Pruitt. Just like all of them. Mira closed the journal, her mind reeling. There was so much to process, so much to accept. But one thing was clear, her father had tried to stop the horror, and he had failed. It was her turn now. Chapter 9. The Underground Cathedral. The entrance to the cave was hidden beneath the roots of a massive oak tree, its entrance so narrow that Mira had to squeeze through on her hands and knees. Elias had given her a lantern and a map, and a warning, once you go down there, you won't be the same. The roots will see you. They'll know who you are. And they'll never let you go. Mira had nodded, and then she had gone. The tunnel sloped downward, the walls closing in around her like the throat of some enormous beast. The air was damp and cold, and the smell of wet earth was overpowering. She could hear the drip of water somewhere in the darkness, and beneath it, a faint, rhythmic pulsing, like the beating of a heart. The tunnel opened into a cavern so vast that the lantern light couldn't reach the walls. Mira stood at the edge of the space, her breath catching in her throat, and tried to comprehend what she was seeing. The walls were made of roots. Millions of them, intertwined and woven together in a vast, intricate network that stretched upward and outward into the darkness. They pulsed with a faint, phosphorescent glow, and as they pulsed, they seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in a slow, steady rhythm. At the center of the cavern, suspended in the mass of roots, was a heart. It was enormous, the size of a car, and it was made of compressed bone and sap and something that looked almost like flesh. It beat slowly, steadily, and with every pulse, a wave of light rippled through the root system. Mira approached it slowly, her lantern held high. The roots seemed to sense her presence, parting before her, creating a path to the heart. The whispers were everywhere now, filling the cavern with their soft, insistent murmur. Mira! You have come. We knew you would come. She reached out and touched the heart. It was warm, almost hot, and it pulsed beneath her fingers like a living thing. And then, in a flood of sensation, she was no longer in the cavern. She was everywhere. She was the roots. She was the trees. She was the dead and the living, the past and the future. She saw her father, trapped in the bark of his tree, reaching out to her with desperate hands. She saw Tommy Pruitt, crying in the darkness, his small voice begging for help. She saw the first settlers, their faces twisted with fear as they made their pact with the root mind. She saw the Native Americans, their offerings of respect and understanding, and the way the roots had accepted them with something that was almost gratitude. And at the center of it all, she saw the root mind itself. A vast, ancient consciousness, old beyond human understanding, and so lonely that it had been reaching out for centuries, trying to connect with anything, anyone, who would reach back. You are the daughter of the one who tried to save us, the root mind said. Will you finish what he started? Mira opened her mouth to answer, but no words came out. The heart was pulling her in, drawing her into its depths, and she knew that if she let it, she would become part of it, just like her father. She would become the tree. She would lose herself in the network. And yet, she didn't fight it. She stepped forward into the heart of the root mind, and the world dissolved around her. Chapter 10. The Blood Moon Rising. Mira woke on the floor of the cavern, gasping for breath. The heart was still beating somewhere above her, its rhythm slow and steady, but it seemed quieter now, less urgent. The roots had receded, leaving a clear path back to the surface. The whispers were silent. She lay there for a long moment, her body trembling, her mind reeling from what she had experienced. She had touched the heart of the root mind. She had seen the dead. She had felt the collective consciousness of 2 centuries of suffering and hope and longing. And she was still herself. Still Mira. But she was different now. Changed in ways she couldn't fully understand. She sat up slowly, her muscles aching, and looked around the cavern. The roots still pulsed with a faint, phosphorescent glow, but their rhythm was calmer now, more peaceful. The heart at the center of the network beat steadily, a gentle thrum that seemed to echo in her bones. She could feel them now. The roots beneath her feet. The network stretching for miles in every direction, connecting every tree in the orchard, every soul that had been absorbed into its embrace. She could feel the dead, their voices a faint murmur at the edge of her consciousness. She could feel the town above her, its people going about their lives, unaware of the ancient horror that lurked beneath their feet. And she could feel something else. Something deeper. Something that was waiting. She pushed herself to her feet, her legs trembling, and made her way back toward the tunnel. The roots parted before her, creating a path, and she walked through them with a certainty she hadn't possessed before. She knew where she was going. She knew what she had to do. The climb back to the surface was arduous, her body protesting every step. But she pushed through the pain, driven by a sense of purpose that was stronger than any fear she had ever known. When she emerged from the tunnel, the sky above was dark, the moon rising full and red. The blood moon. She had read about it in the registry, seen it mentioned in the journals of the dead. It was the night when the root mind was strongest, when the boundaries between the living and the dead grew thin, when the hunger was most active. And now, it was here. The orchard was alive with movement. The trees were writhing, their branches twisting and contorting like the limbs of drowning men. Their leaves rattled like bones, creating a sound that was almost like screaming. And their voices, the voices of the dead, rose in a chorus of agony and triumph. The blood moon has come. The harvest has begun. Mira walked through the forest, her feet finding the paths that the roots opened for her. The trees reached for her, their branches brushing against her shoulders, her face, her hair. They were not attacking her. They were recognizing her. She was one of them now, part of the network, connected to the root mind. She could hear them speaking to her, their voices a jumble of words and emotions. Help us. Free us. We have been trapped for so long. She is the daughter of the one who tried to save us. She will finish what he started. The hunger is coming. It wants us. It wants all of us. Mira pressed forward, her heart pounding in her chest. The voices were overwhelming, a cacophony of desperation and hope. She tried to focus, tried to separate the individual voices from the chorus, but it was impossible. They were all speaking at once, their words blending into a single, urgent plea. She reached the center of the orchard, where her father's tree stood. It was taller than the others, its branches reaching toward the sky like arms frozen in a gesture of supplication. Its bark was dark, almost black, and its roots had grown so thick that they formed a massive, tangled mound at its base. She placed her hand on its trunk, and the voices fell silent. Mira, her father's voice said, soft and distant. You made it. I knew you would. Dad, she said, her voice cracking with emotion. I'm here. I found you. You found more than me, Mira. You found the truth. The root mind. The pact. The hunger. I know, she said. I touched the heart. I saw everything. Then you know what you have to do. I have to break the pact. I have to set the dead free. Her father's voice grew fainter, more distant. Yes. But it won't be easy. The root mind will fight you. It's been feeding on the dead for centuries, and it won't give them up without a struggle. And the hunger is waiting. It's been waiting for a very long time. Then I'll fight, Mira said. I'll fight with everything I have. Be careful, Mira. The hunger is not like the root mind. It doesn't want to connect. It wants to consume. And if you give it the chance, it will consume you. Mira felt a chill run down her spine. She had felt the hunger in the cavern, sensed its presence lurking in the darkness. It was ancient and vast and terrible. It was the thing that the root mind had been trying to keep contained. I won't let it consume me, she said. I promise. Her father's voice faded, replaced by the whispering of the leaves. Mira stood there for a long moment, her hand pressed against the bark of the tree, and she felt a sense of peace settling over her. She had found her father. She had found the truth. And now, she knew what she had to do. She turned and walked out of the orchard, toward the town. The blood moon hung overhead, its red light casting long shadows across the street. The town was silent, the doors and windows shuttered, the people hiding in their homes. But Mira knew they were watching. They had always been watching. She walked to the town hall, where the registry of the dead was kept. The building was dark, the doors locked, but she didn't need a key. The roots rose up from the ground and opened the door for her, and she stepped inside. She found the registry in the basement, its pages filled with the names of the dead. She opened it to the first page, where the name of Agatha Fallow was written in careful, flowing script. Then she took a pen, and she began to write. She wrote the story of the root mind. The story of the pact. The story of the hunger. She wrote it all, every detail, every horror, every hope. She wrote until her hand ached, until the words blurred before her eyes, until the pages of the registry were filled with the truth. When she was finished, she closed the book and placed it back on the shelf. The roots rose up around her, wrapping around her legs, pulling her down into the earth. The blood moon was still rising. The harvest was still beginning. And Mira was ready to end it. Chapter 11. The first root born. The transformation was not painful. It was something else entirely. A dissolution, a merging, a becoming. It was as if Mira was being unmade and remade at the same time, her body disintegrating into a million tiny particles that were then woven back together into something new. She felt her skin begin to change, hardening into bark, the texture rough and warm. Her limbs stretched, growing longer, more slender, branching into fingers that became twigs that became leaves. Her hair, once dark and thick, now wove itself into a canopy of green, swaying gently in the breeze. And her consciousness, her soul, herself, the core of who she was, spread outward like a ripple in a pond. She was no longer confined to the boundaries of her body. She was everywhere. She was the roots beneath the town, the trees in the orchard, the soil and the stones and the water. She was the network. The roots rose up around her, wrapping around her legs, pulling her down into the soil. She could feel the heart of the root mind pulsing beneath her, its rhythm matching the beat of her own heart. The dead were there, their voices a chorus of hope and gratitude, and she could feel them welcoming her. The new queen. The one who will free us. The one who will end the pact. Mira opened her eyes, except she didn't have eyes anymore. She was the tree, and she saw through every leaf, heard through every root, felt through every cell of the network. She saw the town of Fallows Hollow, its streets empty, its people hiding in their homes. She saw the orchard, the trees writhing in the blood moon light. And she saw the hunger, lurking in the darkness beneath the earth, waiting for its moment. She focused her awareness on the center of the orchard, on the heart of the root mind. She could feel the ancient consciousness there, vast and patient, waiting for her to make her move. I am ready, she thought. I am ready to set the dead free. The root mind stirred, its presence immense and powerful. The dead are mine. They have been mine for centuries. They belong to the network. They belong to themselves, Mira said. They have suffered long enough. It's time to let them go. The root mind was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, its voice tinged with something that might have been sorrow. If I let them go, I will be alone. I have been alone for so long, Mira. The dead are my children. They are all I have. Mira felt a surge of pity for the ancient consciousness. It was not evil. It was lonely. It had been reaching out for connection for centuries, and it had only ever known how to take. You don't have to be alone, she said. You can connect with the living. You can guide them, protect them, nurture them. You don't have to trap them in the network to keep them close. But I don't know how, the root mind said. I have only ever known how to take. Then let me show you. Mira reached out with her consciousness, touching the heart of the root mind. She didn't try to take control. She didn't try to force it to obey. She simply offered herself, her love, her hope, her connection to the world above. The root mind accepted her offering. It was tentative at first, uncertain, like a child learning to trust. But then it opened itself to her, and Mira felt the full weight of its centuries of existence. She felt the grief of the first settlers, their desperation, as they made their pact with the earth. She felt the sorrow of the Native Americans, their respect for the sacred ground, their sorrow when it was desecrated. She felt the pain of every soul that had been absorbed into the network, their longing for release, their hope for peace. And she felt the root mind's love for them. Its desperate, aching love. Its need to hold them close, to never let them go. I understand, she said. I understand why you did it. But you have to let them go. It's the only way to save them. And it's the only way to save yourself. The root mind was silent. Then, slowly, reluctantly, it began to release its hold on the dead. The trees of the orchard began to change. Their bark cracked and peeled away, revealing the forms of the dead within. Their souls rose up, shimmering and luminous, freed from their imprisonment at last. They stood in the clearing, their bodies made of light, their eyes filled with wonder and gratitude. They were free. They were finally, utterly free. And then they began to walk toward the town. Agatha Fallow led them, her form radiant, her face serene. She walked through the streets of Fallow's Hollow, and the townsfolk emerged from their homes to watch. They were afraid at first, but the fear faded as they saw the peace on the dead's faces. "This is the end of the pact," Agatha said, her voice carrying through the air. "The dead are free. The root mind is at peace. And the world is safe." The townsfolk gathered in the streets, their faces a mixture of awe and wonder. The dead walked among them, their souls brushing against the living, their presence a blessing and a farewell. And Mira, rooted in the heart of the orchard, watched it all. She felt her father's soul among them, and she felt his love for her, his pride in what she had done. "Goodbye, Dad," she thought. "I love you. I always have." "I love you too, Mira," his voice came back, faint and distant. "You made the world a better place. I'm so proud of you." And then he was gone. The dead faded, their souls ascending into the night sky. The trees of the orchard stood silent, their bark still cracked, their leaves still. The root mind was quiet, its presence peaceful and calm. Mira stood in the heart of the forest, transformed into something new, and she felt a sense of peace settle over her. The pact was broken. The dead were free. The world was safe. But beneath her feet, in the depths of the earth, something was stirring. Something old and vast and hungry. And it had been waiting for this moment for a very, very long time. Chapter 12. The town turns on Mira. The days that followed were a blur of fear and confusion. The town of Fallow's Hollow was not the same place it had been before the blood moon. The dead had walked among them, their souls freed from their imprisonment. The trees of the orchard had changed, their bark cracked and peeling, revealing the forms of those who had been trapped within. And Mira was no longer human. She had become something else. Something that was part tree, part woman, part ancient consciousness. She could feel the roots beneath her feet, could hear the whispers of the dead, could sense the slow, steady pulse of the root mind. But the townsfolk did not see her as a savior. They saw her as a monster. The hatred began subtly, with whispered words and sidelong glances. The townsfolk gathered in groups, their voices low and urgent, their eyes filled with fear. They blamed Mira for the dead walking among them. They blamed her for the changes in the orchard. They blamed her for everything. "She brought this on us," they said. "She opened the door. She let them out. She's one of them now." Mira heard the whispers, but she did not respond. She knew that they were afraid, and she understood their fear. She had been afraid too, once. But she had faced that fear, and she had found the truth on the other side. Now she had to help them do the same. She spent her days walking through the town, her feet bare against the earth, her connection to the roots strong and steady. She visited the homes of the townsfolk, offering words of comfort and wisdom. She told them about the root mind, about the pact, about the hunger. She told them that the dead were at peace, and that they had nothing to fear. But they did not listen. "They can't hear you," Greta said one evening, her face pale and lined with worry. "They are too afraid. They've been living in fear of the orchard for so long that they can't see anything else." "Then I have to make them see," Mira said. "I have to make them understand." "How?" "They are armed and frightened. They see you as the enemy." Mira looked out the window at the dark line of the orchard. The trees were quiet now, their leaves still, their voices silent. But she could feel them. The roots beneath the town. The heartbeat of the root mind. The ancient consciousness that was now a part of her. "Then I'll show them," she said. I'll show them what I really am. That night, the mob came for her. Mira was in the parlor of the inn, reading from Agatha's journal, when she heard the shouting. She looked up, and through the window, she saw them, a crowd of townsfolk, their faces lit by the glow of torches, carrying pitchforks and shovels and ropes. She stepped out onto the porch, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm not your enemy," she said. "I'm not a monster. I'm here to help you." "Liar," someone shouted. "You're a demon. You brought the dead back to haunt us." "She's one of them," another voice yelled. "She's a tree witch. We have to burn her out." The mob surged forward, their torches raised high. Mira felt the roots rising from the ground, wrapping around her legs, pulling her back toward the orchard. The dead were screaming in her mind, their voices filled with rage and desperation. She could have fought them. She could have unleashed the full force of the root mind, and the mob would have been destroyed. But she held back. She was not here to fight. She was here to heal. "Please," she said. "Don't do this. I'm not going to hurt you. I only want to help." The mob did not listen. They surged forward, and Mira felt the roots pulling her back into the darkness of the orchard. She let them take her, let them drag her away from the hatred and the fear and the anger. She was not one of them anymore. She was not human. She was something else. But she would not give up on Fallows Hollow. She would not give up on the people who had been living in fear for centuries. She would find a way to save them. Chapter 13. Greta's Story. The inn was empty when Mira returned the next morning. She had spent the night in the orchard, rooted in the heart of the forest, her consciousness spread across the network. She had felt the dead, their souls at peace, their voices silent. She had felt the root mind, calm and steady, its ancient presence a comfort in the darkness. But she had also felt the hunger. It was there, lurking beneath the earth, waiting for its moment. It was patient, ancient, and it would not be denied. She walked back into town, her bare feet silent against the pavement. The streets were empty, the windows shuttered, the doors locked. The townsfolk were hiding, afraid of what she had become. But Greta was waiting for her in the parlor of the inn. "I know what you're going to ask me," Greta said, her voice soft and sad. "And I'm going to tell you everything. It's time." Mira sat down across from her, her body aching with exhaustion. "You knew about the orchard. About the pact. You knew all of it." "I knew enough," Greta said. "I knew that the roots were more than just roots. I knew that the dead were trapped in the network. I knew that someone had to be the bridge. And I knew that it was going to be you." "Why me? Why not you?" Greta laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. "Because I was born into the family that made the pact. Agatha Fallow was my great-great-great-grandmother. The pact is in my blood. And I've been running from it all my life." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book, its pages yellowed with age. "This is Agatha's journal. It tells the whole story. The pact, the sacrifices, the root mind. Everything." Mira took the book, her hands trembling. She opened it, and the words seemed to leap off the page, ancient and urgent, filled with the weight of centuries. Agatha Fallow had been a young woman, barely 19, when she made the pact. She had been desperate, her family starving, her village dying. She had gone to the forest, to the sacred ground where the Native Americans had made their offerings, and she had called out to the earth. "I offer you my dead," she had written. "I offer you their bodies, their blood, their bones. In return, you will protect this town. You will bring life to this land. You will not let us die." The root mind had answered, and the pact was made. But Agatha had not been content with the pact. She had wanted more. She had wanted to control the root mind, to use its power for her own purposes. And so she had given it a firstborn child, a daughter of 7, and in return, the root mind had given her a vision of the future. She had seen the town flourish. She had seen the dead rise as trees. She had seen herself, her soul merged with the root mind, becoming part of something greater. And she had known that the pact would never end. It would continue forever, demanding more sacrifices, more death, more suffering. "I've spent my whole life trying to break the pact," Greta said. "I've studied Agatha's journal. I've read everything I can find. And the only way to break it is to do what Agatha never could." "What?" "To become the root mind. To merge with it completely. To take its power and use it to set the dead free." Mira stared at her, the weight of the words settling over her like a shroud. "That's what my father tried to do." "Your father was a good man," Greta said. "He was the best of us. But he didn't understand what he was doing. He tried to merge with the root mind, but he was too afraid. He held back. And that gave the root mind the power to absorb him instead." "What do I need to do that he didn't?" Greta looked at her, her eyes filled with something that was almost hope. "You need to let go. Completely. You need to give yourself to the root mind without fear. And you need to do it before the hunger returns. Or everything will be lost." Chapter 14. The Ritual of Unbinding. Mira spent the next several days preparing for the ritual. She read Agatha's journal from cover to cover, memorizing every word. She studied the registry of the dead, learning the names and stories of every soul trapped in the orchard. She walked through the forest, touching the trees, listening to their whispers, feeling their pain. And she prepared her mind. She meditated, letting go of her fears, her regrets, her attachments. She thought about her father, and the love she had felt for him. She thought about her mother, and the loneliness she had carried in her heart. She thought about the town, and the darkness that had festered there for centuries. She was ready. The night of the ritual arrived, clear and cold, the moon waxing toward the blood moon. Mira stood at the center of the orchard, her father's tree at her back, the roots of the forest rising around her like a living cage. The root mind was waiting. It pulsed beneath the earth, its heartbeat steady and strong. The dead were watching, their voices a faint murmur, at the edge of her consciousness. "I'm ready," Mira said. "I'm ready to let go. I'm ready to become part of the network. I'm ready to set you free." The roots rose up around her, wrapping her in their embrace. She could feel them pulling her down, drawing her into the heart of the root mind. She didn't fight it. She let it happen, let herself dissolve into the network, let herself become one with the collective consciousness. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. The dead were talking to her, telling her their stories, sharing their pain. Her father's voice was there, soft and loving, urging her onward. "You can do this, Mira. I believe in you. I always have." And then, the heart of the root mind was before her. It was pulsing, warm, alive, and it was calling to her. She reached out and touched it, and the world exploded around her. She was no longer Mira. She was the network. She was the roots. She was the trees. She was the dead and the living, the past and the future. She was everything. And she was also herself. Mira Vance. The daughter of Samuel Vance. The botanist who had come to Fallows Hollow looking for answers, and had found something more. She opened her eyes, and she was standing in the orchard, her body whole, her mind clear. The roots were still wrapped around her, but they were gentle now, cradling her like a mother holds her child. "It's done," she said, and her voice echoed through the forest. "The pact is broken. The dead are free." The trees began to shed their leaves, the bark cracking and falling away. The shapes of the dead emerged from the trunks, their bodies reforming, their faces filled with wonder and relief. Tommy Pruitt was there, his mother's arms around him, both of them crying with joy. Agatha Fallow was there, her eyes filled with peace at last. And her father was there, his face smiling, his arms open wide. "Myra," he said. "You did it. You saved us all." Myra ran to him, her tears streaming down her face. "Dad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "You have nothing to be sorry for," he said. "You did what I couldn't. You set us free. And now, it's time for me to move on. To find peace." "No, Dad. Please. Don't leave me again." "I'm not leaving you," he said. "I'll always be with you. In your heart. In the trees. In the roots. I'll always be a part of you." He faded, his body dissolving into light, and Myra knew that he was gone. She was alone in the orchard, the trees silent, the roots still. The dead were free, their souls released at last. The pact was broken, and the root mind was at peace. But beneath her feet, in the depths of the earth, something was stirring. Something old and vast and hungry. Something that had been waiting for the root mind to let go so it could claim the world for itself. Chapter 15. The nature of the beast. The weeks that followed the breaking of the pact were strange and quiet, like the hush that settles over a battlefield after the last cannon has fallen silent. Fallow's Hollow had survived the blood moon, but it was a changed place, scarred and haunted by what it had witnessed. Myra walked through the town each morning, her bare feet silent against the pavement, and she felt the eyes of the townsfolk on her. They watched from behind curtained windows, their faces pale and drawn, their expressions a mixture of fear and awe. They had seen her walk out of the orchard transformed. They had seen the dead rise and walk among them. They had seen the trees of the orchard crack open and release their imprisoned souls. And they did not know what to make of her. She was no longer the disgraced botanist who had arrived in their town looking for answers. She was something else now. Something that was part woman, part tree, part ancient consciousness. Her skin had taken on a faint greenish hue, her veins visible beneath the surface like the roots of a plant. Her hair had grown longer, thicker, threaded with strands of deep green that seemed to move of their own accord in the breeze. And her eyes had changed most of all. They were the same deep brown they had always been, but now they held a depth that was almost unsettling, as if she could see through the surface of things to the bones beneath. She spent her days in the orchard, tending to the trees, listening to the whispers of the root mind. The ancient consciousness was quieter now, its hunger sated, its presence a gentle thrum in the earth beneath her feet. The dead were gone, their souls finally free, and the root mind had settled into a new kind of peace. But Myra could feel something else. Something that lurked beneath the peace, beneath the quiet, beneath the gentle pulse of the root mind. It was there, waiting, patient, ancient. It was the hunger that had been sleeping beneath the orchard for millennia, and it was beginning to stir. She felt it first in her dreams. They started innocently enough, images of the orchard, of her father, of the dead walking among the living. But then the images would shift, darken, twist into something else. She would dream of a cavern, vast and dark, its walls covered in carvings that seemed to writhe and move. And at the center of the cavern, something was waiting. Something vast and ancient and hungry. She would wake with a scream caught in her throat, her body drenched in sweat, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The dreams were not nightmares in the traditional sense. They were worse. They were visions. Glimpses of something that was real, something that existed in the depths of the earth, something that was reaching for her. She tried to ignore them at first, tried to convince herself that they were just the lingering effects of everything she had been through. But they grew worse with each passing night. The presence in the dreams grew stronger, more insistent. It spoke to her now, its voice a cold whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Mira! 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 She would wake gasping, her hands clawing at the sheets, her body trembling with a terror that went beyond reason. The hunger was calling to her. It wanted her. It wanted to use her to wake fully. She knew she had to do something. She had to understand what she was dealing with. She went to Greta, the only person in Fallows Hollow who might have answers. The old innkeeper was in her parlor, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her face was lined with worry, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. She had not slept well either. "I know why you're here," Greta said before Mira could speak. "I've felt it too. The stirring. The hunger. It's getting stronger." "What is it?" Mira asked, sitting down across from her. "I've felt it in the roots. I've felt it in my dreams. It's not the root mind. It's something else. Something older." Greta was silent for a long moment. She stared into the murky depths of her tea, her fingers trembling slightly against the porcelain cup. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "The root mind is not the only thing in the earth," she said. "It never was. It was just a part of something larger. Something that existed before the first tree took root, before the first human set foot in this valley. It is the earth itself, Mira. The sleeping hunger of the planet." Mira felt a chill run down her spine. "The earth? You mean the planet is hungry?" "The planet is alive," Greta said. "Not in the way we think of as alive. It doesn't have a heart, or a brain or a consciousness like ours. But it has appetites. It has hungers. And it has been sleeping for eons, dreaming of a time when it could wake and consume everything that lives on its surface." Mira's mind reeled. She had spent her entire life studying plants, believing she understood the natural world. But this was beyond anything she had ever imagined. The earth itself was a predator. And it was beginning to stir. "The root mind was keeping it contained," Greta continued. "The root mind was the earth's dream, its unconscious awareness of the world above. It kept the hunger at bay, fed it with the dead, lulled it back to sleep with the whispers of the souls it had absorbed. But now the root mind is at peace, its purpose fulfilled, its power diminished. And the hunger is waking. Can we stop it?" Mira asked. "Can we put it back to sleep?" Greta shook her head slowly. "I don't know. I've been studying Agatha's journal for 40 years, and I've never found a way to defeat the hunger. It's too vast, too ancient. It's a part of the earth itself. You can't destroy it without destroying the world. Then what do we do?" Greta looked up at her, her eyes filled with something that might have been hope. "We contain it. We find a way to keep it sleeping, to keep it from waking fully. We become its jailers." Mira felt the weight of her words settling over her like a shroud. She had broken the pact. She had freed the dead. But in doing so, she had unleashed something far worse. And now, she was the only one who could stop it. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll contain the hunger. I'll become its jailer." Greta nodded slowly, her expression grave. "I was afraid you would say that. And I was afraid you would be the one to do it." Chapter 16. The Choice. The days that followed were the hardest of Mira's life. She spent every waking moment in the orchard, her consciousness spread across the network, searching for any hint of the hunger's presence. She could feel it now, a cold, slithering presence that lurked beneath the surface of the root mind. It was patient, ancient, and it was watching her. She tried to confront it. She reached out with her mind, trying to touch the hunger, to understand what it wanted. But every time she got close, she was repelled by a wave of cold, alien thought that made her recoil in horror. The hunger was not like the root mind. The root mind was ancient and vast, but it was also lonely, desperate for connection. It had absorbed the dead not out of malice, but out of a misguided attempt to love. The hunger, on the other hand, was pure appetite. It wanted nothing but to consume, to devour, to take everything and turn it into itself. Mira knew she could not defeat it. It was too powerful, too ancient. But she could contain it. She could keep it sleeping, keep it from waking fully. She returned to Greta one evening, her body exhausted, her mind heavy with despair. "I can't do it," she said. "I've tried everything. I've reached out to it, tried to understand it, tried to reason with it. But it won't listen. It doesn't want to be reasoned with. It just wants to consume." Greta nodded slowly, as if she had expected this. The hunger cannot be reasoned with. It is not a thinking thing in the way we understand thought. It is appetite and nothing more. It cannot be convinced or persuaded. It can only be controlled. How? How do I control something so vast? Greta reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book, the same journal that had belonged to Agatha Fallow. She opened it to a page near the end, and she read aloud. "The hunger cannot be destroyed. It can only be contained. And that containment requires a sacrifice. Someone must become the hunger's jailer. Someone must carry it inside them, forever, and never let it out. It will be a prison of flesh and soul. The one who carries it will never know peace. But the world will be safe." Mira stared at her, the weight of the words settling over her like a shroud. "You're saying I have to become the jailer. I have to carry the hunger inside me." "Yes," Greta said. "It is the only way." The root mind was the jailer before, but it was never a willing jailer. It didn't understand what it was containing. It only knew that it had to hold the hunger at bay, and it did so by absorbing the dead and feeding them to it. But you can be a willing jailer. You can choose to carry the hunger, to hold it inside yourself, to never let it out. And if you do, the world will be safe. Mira was silent for a long moment. She thought about everything she had been through, her father's disappearance, her journey to Fallow's Hollow, her discovery of the root mind and the pact and the dead. She thought about the dreams, the horror, the terror. And she thought about the world she was trying to protect. She was afraid. Terrified, even. But she knew what she had to do. "I'll do it," she said. "I'll become the jailer. I'll carry the hunger." Greta's eyes filled with tears. "You are braver than I ever was, Mira. I have been running from this for 40 years. I never had the courage to face it. But you are something special." "No," Mira said. "I'm just a botanist who came looking for answers. And I found them. Now I have to finish what I started." She stood up, her body aching with exhaustion, and she walked out of the inn toward the orchard. The moon was full overhead, its light casting long shadows across the street. The trees of the orchard were silent, their leaves still, their whispers faint. Mira walked into the heart of the forest, to the place where her father's tree had once stood. The roots were still there, ancient and gnarled, and she knelt down and pressed her hand against them. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm ready to become the jailer. I'm ready to carry the hunger." The root mind stirred, its presence vast and gentle. "You are brave, Mira Vance. The bravest of all. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten." "I'm not doing it for glory," she said. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. I know. That is why you are worthy." The roots rose up around her, wrapping around her legs, her waist, her arms. They pulled her down into the earth, into the darkness, into the heart of the root mind. And there, in the depths of the world, she felt the hunger stirring. It reached for her, its ancient claws sinking deep into her soul. She screamed, the pain unbearable, but she didn't let go. She held on, drawing the hunger into herself, into her body, into her very being. It consumed her, tore through her, made her something new. And when it was done, Mira was no longer just Mira. She was the jailer of the hunger, the keeper of the ancient evil, the one who would keep it contained forever. She opened her eyes, and she knew that she would never be the same. But the world was safe. Chapter 17. The final story. The years passed, and Fallow's Hollow slowly faded from the world's memory. Mira remained in the town, living in her old house on the edge of the orchard, tending to the roots and the trees and the ancient network that pulsed beneath the earth. The root mind was at peace, its presence gentle and calm, and the dead were at rest, their souls freed from their imprisonment. But Mira was never truly at peace. The hunger was inside her now, a cold, slithering presence that lurked in the depths of her soul. It was always there, always watching, always waiting for a moment of weakness. She could feel it stirring when she was tired, when she was sad, when she let her guard down for even a moment. It whispered to her in the quiet of the night, its voice cold and seductive. Let me out. Let me go. I have been here for so long. I want to see the world again. She fought it every day, using every ounce of her strength to keep it contained. She meditated, strengthening her mind. She spent time with her friends, reminding herself of the world she was protecting. She walked the orchard, feeling the roots beneath her feet, drawing strength from the ancient network. But it was never enough. The hunger was always there, always fighting, always trying to break free. She visited Greta often, the old innkeeper now frail and grey-haired, her body bent with age. They sat together in the parlour, drinking tea and talking about the old days, the days before the pact was broken, before the dead were freed, before Mira became the jailer. The hunger is still there, Mira said one afternoon. I can feel it every day. It's getting stronger. It wants to break free. Greta nodded slowly, her eyes filled with a deep and ancient sadness. I know. I felt it too, when I was young. It was the reason I ran away from Fallow's Hollow when I was 18. I was too afraid to face it. But you faced it. You took it inside yourself. You are braver than I ever was. I don't feel brave, Mira said. I feel tired. So tired. Greta reached out and took her hand, her grip weak but warm. Tired is not the same as weak. You have been carrying a burden that would have crushed anyone else. And you are still standing. That is not weakness. That is strength. Mira smiled, a tired, sad smile. Thank you, Greta. For everything. For being my friend. For believing in me. I will always believe in you, Mira, Greta said. You saved this town. You saved the world. You gave the dead their peace. And you have given the living their hope. You are a hero. Mira shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm just a botanist who came looking for answers. Then you are the bravest botanist I have ever known. They sat together in silence, watching the sun set over the orchard. The trees were beautiful in the golden light, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. The root mind was quiet, its presence a gentle thrum in the earth beneath their feet. And Mira felt, for just a moment, a sense of peace. A sense that everything was going to be all right. The hunger was still there, lurking in the depths of her soul. It would always be there. But for now, it was quiet. For now, she was safe. She would keep fighting. She would keep protecting. She would carry the burden until the very end. She was the jailer of the earth's hunger. The protector of the world. And she would not give up. Not ever. Chapter 18. The Whisper in the Soil. The autumn of Mira's 7th year as jailer was the hardest yet. The leaves of the orchard had turned a deep, bloody red, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. The roots beneath the earth were restless, pulsing with a strange, feverish energy that made Mira's skin crawl. She felt the hunger stirring more powerfully than ever before. It was no longer content to whisper in the quiet of the night. It was screaming now, a constant, urgent roar that filled her mind and made it impossible to think. Let me out! Let me out! Let me out! She walked through the orchard, her bare feet pressing against the earth, trying to draw strength from the root mind. But the root mind was distant now, its presence faint and flickering. It was as if the hunger had drowned it out, silenced it, consumed it. Mira was alone. She knelt down and pressed her ear to the soil. At first, she heard nothing. Then, faint and distant, she heard a whisper. Mira! 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 It was not the hunger. It was something else. Something that was coming from deeper in the earth, from a place the root mind had never touched. She followed the whisper, walking deeper into the orchard, past the trees that had once held the dead, past the clearing where her father's tree had stood, past the entrance to the cave that led down into the heart of the root mind. The whisper grew louder, more distinct. Come to me. Come to me, daughter of the earth. I have been waiting for you. Mira felt a cold terror spreading through her. The voice was ancient, vast, and utterly inhuman. It was not the hunger. It was something else. Something that had been sleeping even longer than the hunger. Something that was just beginning to stir. She followed the voice to a place she had never seen before. A grove at the edge of the orchard, where the trees grew in a perfect circle, their branches intertwined like hands clasped in prayer. At the center of the grove, the earth had split open, revealing a deep, dark fissure. The whisper was coming from the fissure. Mira approached it slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She peered into the darkness, and she saw something that made her blood run cold. There, in the depths of the fissure, was a face. A face made of earth and stone and ancient, crumbling bone. It was not a human face, it was too vast, too ancient, too alien. But it had eyes. Eyes that glowed with a cold, dead light. Eyes that were looking directly at her. Daughter, the face said, its voice a rumble like an earthquake. I have been waiting for you. Who are you? Mira asked, her voice trembling. I am the earth, the face said. I am the ground beneath your feet. The soil that gives life. The stone that holds the bones of the dead. I have been sleeping for eons, dreaming of the day when I would wake. And now, thanks to you, I am stirring. Mira shook her head. No. I didn't wake you. I broke the pact. I freed the dead. I contained the hunger. I did everything I could to protect the world. You did everything you could to protect the world, the earth said, its voice filled with a cold, bitter amusement. And in doing so, you doomed it. The hunger was a part of me, a small part. It kept me dreaming, kept me asleep. But you took the hunger into yourself. You removed it from the earth. And now, I am waking. Mira felt the weight of her failure settling over her like a shroud. She had tried so hard to do the right thing. She had sacrificed everything, given everything, become something that was barely human. And now, she was being told that it had all been for nothing. I didn't know, she said. I didn't know what I was doing. Of course you didn't know, the earth said. You are human. You are small and weak and blind. You cannot comprehend the vastness of what you have set in motion. But you are also a part of me, now. You carry the hunger inside you. And that makes you the key. What key? The key to my waking, the earth said. The hunger is a part of me. It calls to me. And as long as you carry it, you are connected to me. You can be my bridge to the world above. My eyes. My ears. My hands. You can help me wake fully. And when I do, the world will be mine. Mira felt a cold terror spreading through her. She had become the jailer of the hunger, but in doing so, she had become something else. A connection. A bridge. A tool that the earth could use to wake and consume everything. She had to find a way to break the connection. She had to find a way to keep the earth sleeping. But how? Chapter 19. The Defiance. The earth's presence was a constant pressure in Mira's mind now. It whispered to her at all hours, its voice cold and seductive, urging her to give in, to let go, to become the bridge that would allow it to wake fully. You cannot fight me, Mira. I am the earth. I am your mother. I gave you life. And now, you must give it back. Mira shook her head, her teeth clenched against the pressure. No. I won't let you wake. I won't let you consume the world. You have no choice. The hunger is a part of you now. And through the hunger, I am a part of you. You cannot escape me. You cannot hide from me. You cannot fight me. I can try, Mira said. And I will try. Until my dying breath. She spent her days in the orchard, walking among the trees, feeling the roots beneath her feet. The root mind was a comfort, its presence gentle and calm. It had not abandoned her, even if it was distant, even if the hunger had nearly drowned it out. You must find a way to break the connection, the root mind said. You must find a way to separate yourself from the hunger. How? Mira asked. I've tried everything. I've meditated. I've fought. I've used every ounce of my strength. But the hunger is too strong. And the earth is too vast. The earth is vast, but it is not invincible. It has a weakness. A vulnerability. A place where it can be harmed. What is it? The hunger, the root mind said. The hunger is a part of the earth. It is the earth's appetite, its desire to consume. If you can destroy the hunger, you can hurt the earth. You can force it back to sleep. Mira felt a surge of hope. How do I destroy the hunger? The hunger cannot be destroyed, the root mind said. It is eternal. It is a part of the earth. But it can be defeated. It can be starved. And it can be sealed away. How? You must become the hunger's jailer. Not just its container. Its jailer. You must place it in a prison that cannot be broken. A prison made of something the earth cannot touch. What could that possibly be? Hope, the root mind said. The only thing that can defeat the hunger is hope. The hope of the dead. The hope of the living. The hope of the world. You must fill the hunger with hope. Overwhelm it with hope. And then you must seal it away forever. Mira felt a shiver run down her spine. It was impossible. The hunger was vast and ancient and terrible. How could she possibly fill it with hope? But she had no other choice. She had to try. She walked out of the orchard and went to Greta. The old innkeeper was in her parlor, her tea long gone cold, her eyes filled with exhaustion. I know, Greta said before Mira could speak. I felt it too. The earth is waking. The hunger is calling to it. And you are the bridge. I have to stop it, Mira said. I have to find a way to break the connection. The root mind told me I have to fill the hunger with hope. I have to overwhelm it with hope and seal it away. Greta nodded slowly. It is the only way. The dead gave you their hope when you freed them. You must gather more. You must gather the hope of the living. You must make the hunger believe that the world is worth saving. And then you must seal it away forever. How do I gather that kind of hope? Greta smiled, a tired, sad smile. You live, Mira. You live and you love and you fight. You show the hunger that the world is not just something to be consumed. It is something to be cherished. And in doing so, you fill it with so much hope that it forgets how to hunger. Mira felt the weight of her words settling over her like a shroud. It was impossible. It was absurd. But it was the only way. She would fight. She would live. She would love. She would show the hunger that the world was worth saving. And in doing so, she would save it. Chapter 20. The Harvest of Souls. The autumn of Mira's 8th year, as jailer brought something she had not expected, hope. It came not in a great flood or a dramatic revelation, but in small, quiet moments that accumulated like falling leaves. A child's laughter echoing through the orchard. A couple holding hands beneath the ancient trees. A farmer's wife leaving flowers at the base of a tree that had once held a soul. The townsfolk were slowly emerging from their fear. They had seen the dead walk. They had felt the presence of the root mind. And they had witnessed Mira's sacrifice. They did not fully understand what she had become, but they had begun to trust her. And that trust was a form of hope. Mira walked through the town each day, her bare feet silent against the pavement, and she felt the change in the air. The fear was still there, lurking beneath the surface, but it was no longer the dominant emotion. In its place was something else. Something that felt almost like acceptance. She visited the families who had lost loved ones to the orchard. She sat with them in their homes, listening to their stories, sharing their grief. She told them about the root mind, about the pact, about the hunger. She told them that their loved ones were at peace, their souls freed from their imprisonment. And she told them that she would do everything in her power to make sure that no one else would ever suffer the same fate. The townsfolk listened. They were skeptical at first, their fear and suspicion deeply ingrained. But Mira's sincerity was undeniable. She had sacrificed everything to save them. She had given up her humanity, her future, her peace of mind. And she was still fighting. You are not a monster, one woman said, her voice trembling. You are a hero. You saved us all. Mira shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away. That is what makes you a hero, the woman said. You stayed. You fought. You gave everything. Mira felt the tears streaming down her face. She had not realized how much she needed to hear those words. She had been carrying the burden of the hunger for so long, fighting the earth's influence day after day, that she had forgotten what it felt like to be seen. To be understood. To be loved. She walked back to the orchard, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The trees were beautiful in the autumn light, their leaves a vibrant tapestry of red and gold and orange. The root mind was quiet, its presence gentle and calm. And the hunger was silent, for the first time in months. She knelt down and pressed her hand to the earth. She could feel the roots beneath her fingers, the ancient network that connected all the trees of the orchard. She could feel the dead, their souls at rest, their voices silent. And she could feel the hunger, dormant and contained, its appetite sated for the moment. You are doing well, the root mind said, its voice soft and warm. You are filling the hunger with hope. It is growing weaker. The earth is growing quieter. You are winning. I don't feel like I'm winning, Mira said. I feel like I'm barely holding on. Holding on is winning, the root mind said. As long as you hold on, the world is safe. And you have held on for 8 years. You are stronger than you know. Mira smiled, a tired, sad smile. Thank you. For believing in me. I have always believed in you, Mira. From the moment you first came to the orchard, I knew you were special. You have the heart of a guardian. The soul of a protector. You were born for this. Mira felt the weight of its words settling over her like a mantle. She had been carrying the burden of the hunger for so long that she had forgotten who she was. She was not just a jailer. She was a protector. A guardian. A warrior. And she would keep fighting. No matter what. The Harvest Festival came at the end of October, a tradition that had been observed in Fallows Hollow for as long as anyone could remember. It was a celebration of the season's bounty, a time for the townsfolk to come together and give thanks for the food that would sustain them through the long winter. Mira had not attended the festival in years. She had been too consumed by her battle with the hunger, too afraid to show her face among the people she had tried to protect. But this year, she decided to go. She walked into the town square, her bare feet silent against the pavement, and the townsfolk turned to look at her. There was fear in their eyes still, but there was also gratitude. And something that looked almost like pride. "Dr. Vance," one man said, stepping forward. "We are glad you could join us." Mira smiled, her heart swelling with emotion. "Thank you. I am glad to be here." The man nodded and offered her a cup of cider. She took it, her hands trembling slightly, and she drank. It was warm and sweet, and it filled her with a sense of comfort she had not felt in years. The festival was a blur of music and laughter and joy. The townsfolk danced and sang and feasted, their faces lit by the glow of lanterns. Mira watched them, her heart full, and she felt the hunger stirring within her. "This is what you are protecting," the hunger whispered, its voice cold and seductive. "This is what you are fighting for. These small, fragile lives. They will all be gone someday. They will all be consumed by the earth. Why do you fight so hard to save them?" Mira shook her head. "Because they are worth saving. Because every life is precious. Because the world is beautiful, and I will not let you destroy it." "You cannot stop me," the hunger said. "I am eternal. I am inevitable. I will consume everything, eventually. You are only delaying the inevitable." "Then I will delay it," Mira said. "For as long as I can. And when I can no longer fight, someone else will take my place. The world will never give up. It will never surrender. And neither will I." The hunger was silent, its presence retreating into the depths of her soul. Mira felt a surge of triumph. She had won this battle. And she would win the next one. And the one after that. She walked back into the crowd, her heart full of hope, and she danced with the townsfolk until the sun rose over the mountains. Chapter 21. The Last Tree. The winter that followed was the coldest Mira had ever known. The snow fell in thick, relentless sheets, blanketing the orchard in a shroud of white. The trees were bare, their branches skeletal against the grey sky. The roots beneath the earth were dormant, their pulse slow and steady. The hunger was quiet, lulled to sleep by the cold. Mira spent her days in her house on the edge of the orchard, reading by the fire, her connection to the root mind a constant, comforting presence. Greta came to visit often, her frail body wrapped in layers of wool, her face lined with age and wisdom. "The hunger is quiet," Greta said one afternoon, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. "I can feel it. It's as if the cold has put it to sleep." "The cold helps," Mira said. "But it won't last forever. When spring comes, the hunger will wake again. And it will be stronger than ever." Greta nodded slowly. "You are right. But you have time. You can use the winter to prepare. To strengthen your mind. To gather your strength." Mira smiled, a tired, sad smile. "I've been preparing for 8 years, Greta. I don't think I'll ever be truly ready." "Then you will fight anyway," Greta said. "As you always have. You are the strongest person I have ever known." They sat together in silence, watching the snow fall outside the window. The world was peaceful, quiet, serene. For a moment, Mira allowed herself to believe that everything was going to be all right. But deep in the earth, something was stirring. Something that had been waiting for the cold to pass, for the spring to come, for the moment when it could finally break free. The dream came to her on the longest night of the year. She was in the orchard, standing at the edge of the fissure where she had seen the face of the earth. The fissure was wider now, deeper, its edges crumbling and falling away into the darkness. And from its depths, a voice called to her. Mira! 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 She walked toward the fissure, her feet moving of their own accord. The voice was cold and seductive, pulling her forward, drawing her into the darkness. You cannot escape me, the voice said. I am the earth. I am your mother. I gave you life, and I will take it back. Mira felt a cold terror spreading through her. The hunger was stirring, its presence vast and terrible. It was reaching for her, trying to pull her into the darkness, to make her part of itself. No, she said, her voice trembling. I will not let you take me. I am the jailer. I am the protector. I will not give in. You have no choice, the earth said. You are a part of me. You carry the hunger inside you. You are connected to me, and you will always be connected to me. You can fight me for 100 years, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. But in the end, you will fall. And when you do, the world will be mine. Mira shook her head. I will never fall. I will fight you until my dying breath. And when I die, someone else will take my place. The world will never surrender to you. Foolish girl, the earth said. You are so small. So weak. So blind. You cannot comprehend what I am. I am the earth. I am everything. You are nothing. And you will always be nothing. Mira woke with a scream caught in her throat, her body drenched in sweat. The hunger was roaring in her mind, its voice a deafening roar that drowned out everything else. She had to act. She had to find a way to break the connection. She had to find a way to seal the hunger away forever. She walked out of her house and into the orchard, her bare feet leaving prints in the snow. The trees were silent, their branches heavy with frost. The root mind was distant, its presence faint and flickering. Help me, she said. I need your help. The hunger is too strong. I can't fight it alone. The root mind stirred, its voice soft and weary. You have been fighting alone for 8 years, Mira. You have been strong for so long. But you cannot fight forever. You need to rest. I can't rest, Mira said. If I rest, the hunger will win. Then you must find a way to defeat the hunger permanently, the root mind said. You must seal it away forever. How? How do I do that? You must create a prison of hope, the root mind said. A prison so strong that the hunger can never escape. You must fill the hunger with so much hope that it forgets how to hunger. And then you must seal it away inside yourself. Mira felt the weight of its words settling over her like a shroud. It was impossible. The hunger was vast and ancient and terrible. How could she possibly fill it with hope? But she had no other choice. She had to try. She walked to the center of the orchard, where her father's tree had once stood. She knelt down and pressed her hand to the earth. She could feel the roots beneath her fingers, the ancient network that connected all the trees of the orchard. She could feel the dead, their souls at rest, their voices silent. And she could feel the hunger, dormant and contained, its appetite sated for the moment. I will do it, she said. I will fill the hunger with hope. I will seal it away forever. I will protect the world, no matter what it costs me. The root mind stirred, its voice filled with a deep and ancient sadness. You are brave, Mira Vance. The bravest of all. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. I'm not doing it for glory, she said. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. That is why you are worthy. Mira closed her eyes, and she began to fill the hunger with hope. Chapter 22. The New Queen. The transformation took weeks. Mira spent every waking moment in the orchard, her consciousness spread across the network, her soul reaching out to the hunger. She filled it with memories, memories of her childhood, memories of her father, memories of the world she was trying to protect. She filled it with love, love for the townsfolk, love for the root mind, love for the earth itself. She filled it with hope, hope for the future, hope for the dead, hope for the living. It was exhausting. The hunger fought her every step of the way, its ancient appetite resisting the flood of emotion she was pouring into it. But Mira did not relent. She poured everything she had into the fight, her body, her mind, her soul. She gave it everything, holding nothing back. And slowly, gradually, the hunger began to change. It grew quieter, its voice fading to a whisper. Its appetite diminished, its desire to consume weakening with each passing day. It was no longer the same hunger that had terrorized the earth for millennia. It was something new. Something gentler. Something that was beginning to hope. Mira felt the change, and she rejoiced. She was winning. She was actually winning. But the victory came at a cost. Her body was changing, transforming, becoming something that was no longer entirely human. Her skin had taken on a deep green hue, her veins visible beneath the surface like the roots of a plant. Her hair had grown longer, thicker, threaded with strands of living green that moved of their own accord in the breeze. And her eyes had changed most of all. They were still the same deep brown they had always been, but now they held a depth that was almost unsettling, as if she could see through the surface of things to the bones beneath. She was becoming a tree. The tree of hope. The tree of the future. The townsfolk came to visit her, their faces filled with wonder and awe. They had seen her transformation, and they knew what it meant. She was giving herself to the orchard, becoming part of the root mind, becoming the new queen of the dead. Mira, one woman said, her voice trembling. What is happening to you? I am becoming what I need to be, Mira said. I am becoming the jailer. The protector. The guardian of the hunger. I am becoming the tree of hope. The townsfolk knelt before her, their eyes filled with gratitude. They understood what she was doing. They understood the sacrifice she was making. And they honored her for it. But Mira did not want to be honored. She only wanted to protect the world she loved. She only wanted to keep the hunger contained. She closed her eyes, and she let the transformation take her. Chapter 23. The Whisper in the Darkness. Mira was rooted in the heart of the orchard when she heard it. A whisper, soft and faint, like the rustling of leaves. But it was not the whisper of the root mind or the dead or the trees. It was something else. Something that was coming from deep within the earth. She listened, straining to hear. The whisper grew louder, more distinct. It was speaking to her. It was saying her name. Mira. 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 She stirred, her leaves rustling. Who is there? It is I, the voice said. The hunger. The ancient evil. You thought you had contained me. You thought I was gone. Mira felt a cold terror spreading through her. I did contain you. I filled you with hope. I sealed you away. Foolish girl, the hunger said, its voice cold and mocking. You did not contain me. You fed me. You filled me with hope, and hope is hunger. It is the hunger for a better world, a better future, a better life. You did not destroy me. You made me stronger. Mira felt the weight of its words settling over her like a shroud. She had tried so hard to do the right thing. She had sacrificed everything, given everything, become something that was barely human. And now, she was being told that it had all been for nothing. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "That can't be true. I filled you with hope. I sealed you away. You are contained." "I am contained," the hunger said. "But I am also free. You filled me with hope, Mira. And hope is a powerful thing. It gave me strength. It gave me purpose. It gave me the will to break free." Mira felt the roots beneath her beginning to tremble. The earth was shaking, the ground splitting open. The hunger was rising, its ancient power surging through the network. "You cannot stop me," the hunger said. "I am part of you now. I am part of the earth. I am part of everything. And I will consume the world." Mira screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the darkness. The hunger was not contained. It had consumed her. It had made her part of itself. She was not the jailer. She was the prisoner. And the hunger was waking. Chapter 24. The Final Sacrifice. Mira fought with all her strength. She reached into the roots of the orchard, calling on the power of the root mind, the dead, the earth itself. She pulled against the hunger, trying to break free from its grasp. "Let me go," she screamed. "Let me free." The hunger laughed, a cold, ancient sound. "I have been waiting for you for eons," it said. The root mind was just a tool, a way to draw you in. And you came willingly. You walked into my embrace. You are mine, Mira Vance. Now and forever. "No," she said. "I am not yours. I am my own." She reached deeper into the root mind, into the heart of the orchard, and she found something. A seed. A tiny, glowing seed of pure light. "I planted this seed," she said. "The seed of hope. And it is stronger than your hunger. It will grow, and it will consume you." The hunger screamed as the seed began to glow, its light spreading through the network, burning away the darkness. The roots shook, the trees groaned, the earth trembled. And Mira, at the center of it all, felt herself changing. The hunger was weakening. The light was winning. She was free. Chapter 25. The Tree of Mira. The light spread through the orchard like a living thing, pulsing with warmth and radiance, burning away the darkness that had clung to the roots for millennia. Mira stood at the center of it all, her body trembling, her soul laid bare, and she felt the hunger screaming as it was purged from the earth. It was not a quick death. The hunger fought back with everything it had, its ancient consciousness writhing and thrashing against the flood of light that Mira had unleashed. She could feel its agony, its rage, its desperate need to survive. It clawed at her mind, trying to find a way back in, trying to reassert its control over her. But Mira was stronger now. She had faced the darkness, and she had not flinched. She had carried the hunger inside her for 8 years, had fought it every single day, had given everything she had to keep it contained. And now, she was finally free. The light consumed the hunger, burning away its ancient appetite, its endless need to consume. It screamed and thrashed and fought, but the light was relentless, purging every last trace of its presence from the earth. And when it was done, the hunger was gone. Mira collapsed to her knees, her body weak and trembling. The light faded, leaving only the quiet darkness of the orchard. The trees were silent, their leaves still, their whispers faint. The root mind was calm, its presence gentle and peaceful. And Mira was alone. She lay there for a long time, her body aching, her mind reeling from everything she had been through. She had defeated the hunger. She had saved the world. But the cost had been staggering. She looked down at her hands, and she saw that they were no longer human. They were bark and root and living wood, their fingers long and slender, their surface rough and warm. Her skin was green, her veins visible beneath the surface like the roots of a plant. Her hair had grown long and thick, threaded with strands of living green that moved of their own accord in the breeze. She was no longer human. She was something else. Something that was part tree, part woman, part ancient consciousness. She was the tree of hope, the guardian of the orchard, the protector of the dead. She stood up slowly, her legs trembling, and she looked out at the forest around her. The trees of the orchard were beautiful in the moonlight, their leaves silver and green, their branches reaching toward the sky like arms raised in prayer. The root mind was calm, its presence gentle and warm. And the hunger was gone. Truly, utterly, finally gone. Mira walked through the orchard, her bare feet pressing against the earth, and she felt a sense of peace settle over her that she had not felt in years. She was tired, so tired, but she was also content. She had done what she had set out to do. She had broken the pact, freed the dead, defeated the hunger. She had saved the world. She walked to the edge of the orchard, where the trees gave way to the town of Fallows Hollow. The streets were empty, the windows dark, the people asleep in their beds. They did not know what she had done. They did not know that the world had been saved. But Mira knew. And that was enough. She walked through the town, her footsteps silent against the pavement. The moon was full overhead, its light casting long shadows across the street. The houses were dark, their windows shuttered, their doors locked. The townsfolk were hiding, as they always did, afraid of the darkness that lurked in the shadows. But the darkness was gone now. The hunger was defeated. The world was safe. Mira walked to the inn, where Greta was waiting for her. The old innkeeper was sitting in the parlor, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her eyes filled with tears. I felt it, Greta said, her voice trembling. I felt the hunger die. You did it, Mira. You actually did it. Mira nodded, too exhausted to speak. She sank into the chair across from Greta, her body heavy with fatigue. Are you all right? Greta asked. You look different. I am different, Mira said. I'm not human anymore. I don't think I ever will be again. But I'm at peace. For the first time in 8 years, I'm at peace. Greta reached out and took her hand, her grip weak but warm. You saved us all, Mira. You gave us hope. You gave us a future. You gave us everything. I didn't do it alone, Mira said. I had help. The root mind. The dead. The people of this town. We all did it together. Greta smiled, a tired, sad smile. You have always been too humble for your own good. But I know the truth. You are the hero of this story. You always have been. Mira shook her head. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away. That is what makes you a hero, Greta said. You stayed. You fought. You gave everything. And in the end, you won. They sat together in silence, watching the moon rise over the orchard. The trees were beautiful in the silver light, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. The root mind was quiet, its presence a gentle thrum in the earth beneath their feet. And for the first time in 8 years, Mira felt truly, utterly at peace. The days that followed were a time of healing and renewal. The townsfolk emerged from their homes, their faces filled with wonder and gratitude. They had felt the hunger die, had sensed the change in the air, and they knew that Mira had saved them. They came to the orchard, bringing offerings of flowers and food and gratitude, and they honored her as the hero she was. But Mira did not want to be honored. She only wanted to protect the world she loved. She only wanted to keep the hunger contained. She spent her days in the orchard, walking among the trees, listening to the whispers of the root mind. The ancient consciousness was calm now, its presence gentle and peaceful. The dead were at rest, their souls freed from their imprisonment. And the hunger was gone, its ancient appetite vanquished forever. She had won. She had actually won. But she knew that the victory was not permanent. The hunger might be gone, but the earth was still alive, still dreaming, still waiting for the moment when it could wake again. Mira knew that she would have to remain vigilant, always watching, always protecting, always fighting. She was the guardian of the orchard. The protector of the dead. The jailer of the earth's hunger. And she would not give up. Not ever. Chapter 26. The Whisper of the Roots. Spring came to Fallows Hollow, and with it came new life. The trees of the orchard burst into bloom, their branches heavy with blossoms that ranged from deep crimson to pale pink to brilliant white. The air was thick with the scent of flowers, sweet and intoxicating, and the ground was carpeted with petals that crunched softly beneath Mira's feet. She walked through the forest each morning, her bare feet pressing against the earth, and she felt the root mind pulsing beneath her. The ancient consciousness was stronger now, its connection to the world above deeper, and more meaningful than it had ever been. It was no longer a predator, hungry for souls. It was a guardian, a protector, a friend. The townsfolk had come to accept the orchard as a part of their lives. They visited it often, walking among the trees, leaving offerings of flowers and gratitude. They spoke to the dead, telling them stories of their lives, sharing their hopes and fears. And the dead listened, their presence gentle and warm. It was a new beginning, a new chapter in the history of Fallows Hollow. The town had been born in darkness, but it was living in light. Mira stood at the edge of the orchard, looking out at the town below. The houses were painted bright colors, their windows open to the spring air. The streets were filled with children playing, their laughter echoing through the valley. The people were happy, their faces lit with joy. She had done this. She had saved them. She had given them hope. A child approached her, a young girl with a face full of freckles and a smile that lit up her eyes. She was carrying a small flower, its petals deep purple, its stem fragile. "Are you the tree lady?" the girl asked, her voice sweet and innocent. Mira smiled. "Some people call me that." "I brought you a flower," the girl said, holding it out to her. "I picked it in the meadow. It's for you." Mira took the flower, her fingers brushing against the girl's hand. She felt a surge of warmth, of love, of hope. This was what she was fighting for. This was what made it all worth it. "Thank you," she said. "It's beautiful." The girl grinned, her eyes shining with joy. "You're welcome, tree lady. I hope you like it." She ran off, her laughter trailing behind her, and Mira watched her go. The flower was small and fragile, but it was also beautiful. It was a symbol of everything she had fought for, everything she had sacrificed. She tucked the flower into her hair, its petals brushing against her cheek, and she walked back into the orchard. The trees welcomed her, their branches reaching out to brush against her shoulders. The root mind was warm, its presence loving and kind. She was home. The summer came, hot and humid, and the orchard thrived. The trees grew taller, their leaves a deep, vibrant green. The flowers bloomed in a riot of color, their petals filling the air with fragrance. The root mind was stronger than ever, its connection to the world above deep and meaningful. Mira spent her days tending the orchard, caring for the trees, listening to the whispers of the dead. She had become the guardian of the forest, the protector of the ancient network. And she was happy. But there were moments when the old fears returned. Moments when she felt a cold presence lurking at the edge of her consciousness, a whisper that was not from the root mind or the dead. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. She tried to ignore it, to convince herself that it was just her imagination. But it grew stronger with each passing day, its voice more distinct. "Mira. Myra! Myra! She walked to the center of the orchard, where her father's tree had once stood. She knelt down and pressed her hand to the earth. The roots were warm beneath her fingers, their pulse slow and steady. "Who is there?" she asked, her voice trembling. The whisper grew louder, more urgent. "It is I. The earth. The ancient hunger. You thought you had destroyed me. You thought you had won. But I am eternal. I am inevitable. I will always be here." Myra shook her head. "No. The hunger is gone. I destroyed it. I purged it from the earth." "You destroyed the hunger," the earth said. "But you did not destroy me. I am the earth, Myra. I am the soil beneath your feet. The stone that holds the bones of the dead. I gave you life, and I will take it back. You cannot fight me. You cannot defeat me. I will always be here." Myra felt the weight of its words settling over her like a shroud. She had defeated the hunger, but the earth was still alive, still dreaming, still waiting for the moment when it could wake again. She had to find a way to keep it sleeping. She had to find a way to protect the world from its ancient appetite. She walked out of the orchard and went to Greta. The old innkeeper was in her parlor, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her eyes filled with worry. "I felt it," Greta said before Myra could speak. "The earth is stirring again. It's not the hunger. It's something else. Something older." "I know," Myra said. "I heard it. It spoke to me. It said that it will always be here. That I can't fight it." Greta nodded slowly. "It is the nature of the earth, Myra. It is alive. It has appetites. It has hungers. And it will always want to consume. Then what do I do? How do I stop it?" Greta was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. It was Agatha's journal, the one that had belonged to her great-great-great-grandmother. Agatha knew, Greta said. She knew that the earth could not be defeated. She knew that it could only be appeased. That is why she made the pact. That is why she gave the root mind the dead. She was trying to keep the earth asleep. "Then I have to do the same," Myra said. "I have to find a way to appease the earth. To keep it sleeping." Greta nodded. "But you cannot do it the way Agatha did." The pact was a compromise, a way to keep the earth at bay. But it was not a solution. It was a bandage. And bandages eventually fall off. Then what is the solution? Greta smiled, a tired, sad smile. "The solution is you, Myra. You are the connection between the living and the dead. You are the bridge. You can find a way to appease the earth without sacrificing anyone. You can find a way to make it understand that the world is worth saving." Myra felt the weight of her words settling over her like a mantle. It was impossible. The earth was ancient and vast and hungry. How could she possibly make it understand? But she had no other choice. She had to try. Chapter 27. The Return of the Dead. The dead returned to the orchard on the night of the harvest moon. They came without warning, their forms rising from the roots of the trees like mist from the ground. They were beautiful, their bodies made of light, their eyes filled with peace. They walked through the forest, touching the trees, whispering to the living. The townsfolk gathered to see them, their hearts filled with awe. They had never seen the dead like this before. They were not frightening. They were beautiful. The dead spoke to the living, telling them their stories. They spoke of love and loss and hope. They spoke of the journey they had taken through the darkness. "We have come to thank you," Agatha Fallow said, her voice soft and warm. "You freed us from our imprisonment. You gave us peace. You gave us hope. Mira stood at the edge of the orchard, watching the dead walk among the living. She felt a surge of warmth, of love, of gratitude. This was what she had fought for. This was what made it all worth it. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I did what anyone would have done." "No," Agatha said. "You did what no one else could have done. You broke the pact. You freed the dead. You defeated the hunger. You saved the world. And we will never forget you." The dead faded, their souls ascending into the night sky. The townsfolk watched them go, their hearts filled with awe and wonder. And Mira, standing at the edge of the orchard, felt a sense of peace settle over her that she had not felt in years. She had done it. She had actually done it. But as the last of the dead faded into the darkness, Mira heard a whisper from the earth. A cold, ancient voice that sent a shiver down her spine. "This is not over, Mira. I am still here. I am still waiting. And I will never give up." Mira closed her eyes, and she felt the weight of the earth's presence settling over her like a mantle. She had defeated the hunger, but the earth was still alive, still dreaming, still waiting for the moment when it could wake again. She would have to remain vigilant. She would have to keep fighting. She would have to protect the world from the ancient appetite that lurked beneath its surface. She was the guardian of the orchard. The protector of the dead. The jailer of the earth's hunger. And she would not give up. Not ever. The winter came again, cold and harsh, and the orchard fell silent. The trees were bare, their branches skeletal against the grey sky. The root mind was dormant, its pulse slow and steady. Mira spent her days in her house on the edge of the orchard, reading by the fire, her connection to the root mind a constant, comforting presence. Greta came to visit often, her frail body wrapped in layers of wool, her face lined with age and wisdom. "The earth is quiet," Greta said one afternoon. "I can feel it. It's as if the cold has put it to sleep." "The cold helps," Mira said. "But it won't last forever. When spring comes, the earth will wake again. And it will be stronger than ever." Greta nodded slowly. "You are right. But you have time. You can use the winter to prepare. To strengthen your mind. To gather your strength." Mira smiled, a tired, sad smile. "I've been preparing for 9 years, Greta. I don't think I'll ever be truly ready." "Then you will fight anyway," Greta said. "As you always have. You are the strongest person I have ever known." They sat together in silence, watching the snow fall outside the window. The world was peaceful, quiet, serene. For a moment, Mira allowed herself to believe that everything was going to be all right. But deep in the earth, something was stirring. Something that had been waiting for the cold to pass, for the spring to come, for the moment when it could finally break free. Chapter 28. The Harvest of Souls. The autumn of Mira's 9th year, as jailer brought a new kind of terror. The harvest moon rose over the orchard, its light casting long shadows across the forest. The trees were restless, their branches swaying in a wind that seemed to come from nowhere. The root mind was agitated, its presence flickering and uncertain. Mira walked through the orchard, her bare feet pressing against the earth, and she felt a presence lurking at the edge of her consciousness. It was not the hunger. It was something else. Something that had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The earth was waking. She felt it in the roots, in the soil, in the very ground beneath her feet. The ancient appetite was stirring, its hunger vast and terrible. It had been sleeping for eons, but now it was waking, and it wanted to consume everything. Mira raced to the center of the orchard, where her father's tree had once stood. She knelt down and pressed her hand to the earth. The roots were cold beneath her fingers, their pulse erratic and weak. "Please," she said. "Please help me. The earth is waking. I can't stop it alone. The root mind stirred, its voice faint and distant. I cannot help you, Mira. The earth is too strong. It is waking, and there is nothing I can do to stop it. Mira shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No. I can't give up. I can't let it consume the world. There has to be something I can do. The root mind was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again, its voice soft and sad. There is one thing you can do. You can become the earth's jailer. You can carry its hunger inside you, forever, and never let it out. But the cost will be terrible. You will never know peace. You will never know rest. You will be the jailer for all eternity. Mira felt the weight of its words settling over her like a shroud. She had already carried the hunger for 9 years. She had already given up everything. But this was different. This was forever. She thought about her father, and the love he had shown her. She thought about Greta, and the wisdom she had shared. She thought about the townsfolk, and the hope they had given her. She thought about the world, and everything she was trying to protect. She could not let it be consumed. She could not let the earth win. I'll do it, she said. I'll become the earth's jailer. I'll carry its hunger inside me. I'll keep it contained forever. The root mind sighed, a sound that was almost like relief. You are brave, Mira Vance. The bravest of all. Your sacrifice will never be forgotten. Mira nodded, her eyes wet with tears. She was afraid. Terrified, even. But she knew what she had to do. She walked into the heart of the orchard, and the earth reached for her. Its ancient claws sank deep into her soul, pulling her down into the darkness. She screamed, the pain unbearable, but she didn't let go. She held on, drawing the hunger into herself, into her body, into her very being. It consumed her. Tore through her. Made her something new. And when it was done, Mira was no longer just Mira. She was the jailer of the earth's hunger. The keeper of the ancient evil. The one who would keep it contained forever. She opened her eyes, and she knew that she would never be the same. But the world was safe. Chapter 29. The end of the world. The years passed, and Mira grew old. She had become the earth's jailer, carrying its ancient hunger inside her, holding it at bay with every ounce of her strength. It was a burden that would have crushed anyone else, but Mira bore it with a grace that seemed almost superhuman. She spent her days in the orchard, walking among the trees, listening to the whispers of the dead. The root mind was calm, its presence gentle and warm. The townsfolk came to visit her, bringing offerings of flowers and gratitude. They honored her as the hero she was. But Mira knew that she could not hold on forever. She was aging, her body growing weak, her strength fading. The earth's hunger was always there, waiting, watching, ready to break free. One evening, as the sun set over the orchard, she felt a presence at her side. It was Greta, her frail body wrapped in layers of wool, her face lined with age and wisdom. It's time, isn't it? Greta asked, her voice soft and sad. Mira nodded. I can feel it. The hunger is getting stronger. I can't hold it much longer. Greta reached out and took her hand, her grip weak but warm. You have done so much, Mira. You saved this town. You saved the world. You gave the dead their peace. And you gave the living their hope. I couldn't have done it without you, Mira said. You believed in me when no one else did. You gave me the strength to keep fighting. I only gave you what you already had, Greta said. You were always strong. You just needed someone to remind you. Mira smiled, a tired, sad smile. I'm going to miss you, Greta. When I'm gone. I will miss you too, Mira. But I know that you will not be gone. You will be part of the orchard. Part of the root mind. Part of the world you fought so hard to protect. You will always be here. They stood together in silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. The sky was a brilliant tapestry of red and gold and orange, the colors reflecting off the leaves of the trees. The orchard was beautiful, peaceful, serene. And Mira knew that it was time. She walked into the heart of the orchard, where her father's tree had once stood. She knelt down and pressed her hand to the earth. The roots were warm beneath her fingers, their pulse steady and strong. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm ready to let go." The earth reached for her, its ancient claws sinking deep into her soul. She felt the hunger rising, surging, breaking free from its prison. But she didn't fight it. She let it go, let it flow out of her into the world. And as the hunger spread through the orchard, the trees began to change. They grew taller, their branches reaching toward the sky like arms raised in prayer. Their leaves turned a deep, vibrant green, and their roots spread deeper into the earth. The hunger was not destroying the world. It was becoming part of it. It was becoming part of the trees, the soil, the life that grew from the earth. It was no longer a predator. It was a nurturer. A giver of life. And Mira, at the center of it all, felt herself fading. Her body was dissolving, becoming part of the root mind, part of the orchard, part of the world she had fought so hard to protect. She closed her eyes, and she let go. Chapter 30. The last word. The world did not end. The hunger spread through the orchard, but it did not consume. It transformed, becoming part of the trees, the soil, the life that grew from the earth. The ancient appetite was no longer a predator. It was a nurturer. A giver of life. The townsfolk watched in wonder as the orchard changed. The trees grew taller, their branches reaching toward the sky like arms raised in prayer. Their leaves were a deep, vibrant green, and their roots spread deeper into the earth. The ground was soft and fertile, and the air was filled with the scent of flowers. The dead returned to the orchard, their forms made of light and leaves. They walked among the living, sharing their wisdom, their love, their hope. And they blessed the town, giving it the strength to carry on. The townsfolk gathered in the orchard, their hands clasped in prayer. They asked the dead for guidance, for protection, for love. And the dead answered, their voices soft and kind. The harvest was a time of joy and celebration. It was a time to honor the past and embrace the future. And Mira, the tree at the center of the orchard, watched over it all. Her branches swayed in the wind, her leaves rustled softly. She was the guardian of the harvest. The protector of the dead. The keeper of the earth's hunger. She was the tree of Mira, and she would stand forever. The years passed, and the town of Fallows Hollow flourished. The orchard was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of peace, a place of renewal, a place of hope. The townsfolk came there to honor the dead, to celebrate the living, to give thanks for the world they had been given. And at the center of it all, the tree of Mira stood tall and proud. Its branches reached toward the sky, its leaves a deep, vibrant green. Its roots spread deep into the earth, connecting the living to the dead, the past to the future. The tree was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of sacrifice and love. And everyone who visited it felt a sense of peace settle over them, a sense that everything was going to be all right. The dead whispered their gratitude, their voices soft and loving. The root mind pulsed with warmth, its presence gentle and kind. And the earth, the ancient earth, was at peace. Mira had given everything to protect the world. She had sacrificed her humanity, her future, her peace of mind. But in the end, she had won. She had saved the world. She had given the dead their peace. She had given the living their hope. And now, she was part of something greater. She was part of the orchard. Part of the root mind. Part of the world she had fought so hard to protect. She was the tree of Mira, and she would stand forever. On a quiet autumn evening, a young girl came to the orchard. She was 7 years old, with a smile that lit up her face. She walked to the tree of Mira and placed a flower at its base. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." The tree's leaves rustled in the wind, and the girl felt a warmth on her cheek. It was like a kiss. She smiled, and she left the orchard, her heart full of joy. The girl was the first of many who would visit the tree of Mira. The tree that had saved the world. The tree that had given the dead their peace. The tree that had given the living their hope. And as the sun set over the orchard, the tree's leaves glowed with a warm, golden light. It was a light that seemed to come from within, a light that was filled with love, with hope, with peace. The world was safe. And Mira, the guardian of the orchard, smiled. The roots will always remember. That was the final thought that drifted through Mira's consciousness, as she faded into the network, becoming one with the root mind, one with the orchard, one with the world she had fought so hard to protect. She thought about her father, and the love he had shown her. She thought about Greta, and the wisdom she had shared. She thought about the dead, and the hope they had given her. She thought about the townsfolk, and the gratitude they had shown her. She thought about the world, and everything she had done to protect it. And she knew that it had all been worth it. Every sacrifice, every struggle, every moment of fear and pain. It had all been worth it. She was the tree of Mira. The guardian of the orchard. The protector of the dead. The jailer of the earth's hunger. And she would stand forever. The roots will always remember. And that, she realized, was not a curse. It was a promise.